So, hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening to celebrate the Get the Marches Buzzing project. As some of you may know, the project is coming to an end, sadly. Our last day is the 30th of October. So it's really nice to put this event on to take this chance to reflect on the last 2 years. And I really want to just say thank you to everyone that's been involved in the project, that's either worked with us as a contractor, either as a school teacher, an artist, a volunteer, an event attendee. I also really want to take the opportunity to thank all of our landowners that we've been working with. So we've worked closely with the National Trust down at Croft Castle, Jason and Chris. We've also worked with the National Trust in South Shropshire as well. A big thanks to Charlie and Kate from the Stepping Stones project, and Pete Carty as well. Thank you to Matt Betton, the tenant farmer, and also to some of our private landowners as well. So William, Peter and Sue Russell, the landowners at Corbett Farms, and then James Taylor as well. And then finally, a big thank you to Rory and the team at Herefordshire Meadows, and also Rick and the other team members at Telford and Wrekin Council. And I just want to do one last thank you. I thought I'd get them out of the way at the beginning rather than doing it at the end and forgetting, but I know Kate's not on this call because she's actually off hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in America. But Kate Jones, for those of you that have been involved in the project, you'll know who Kate is. She was the original conservation officer, and she actually developed Get the Marches Buzzing. So a big thank you to her because this project wouldn't be possible without her. So tonight I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes. And then Rory from Herefordshire Meadows is going to talk about the work that we've done in Herefordshire. And then Rick's going to be talking about the work in Telford. A tiny bit of housekeeping first. So you'll notice that all your mics and cameras are off, and this talk is actually being recorded because it'll be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. There is a Q&A box, so feel free to put any questions in that Q&A box or in the chat if that's easier, and then we'll be answering some questions at the end, or as we go along I might answer some in the chat box too. So without further ado, I will get started. Right, a little bit about Buglife. So we're the Invertebrate Conservation Trust, and we are the only organisation in Europe devoted to the conservation of all invertebrates. We were formed in 2000. There was actually no organisation at the time specialising in just invertebrates. I think quite a lot of organisations got together and realised that there was this gap in the market, a gap in the conservation sector that we needed to fill, and Buglife was born. So our aim is, as it says on the screen, to stop invertebrate extinctions and achieve sustainable populations of invertebrates. And our tagline is saving the small things that run the planet. And there are a lot of those small things. In fact, there are over 40,000 invertebrate species in the UK. I'm not going to read out all of the different species that we have and how many we have, but there's a huge diversity of invertebrates. And I thought that I would share this diagram with you all because I think it just shows that invertebrates really are the building blocks of our food chain. There are recyclers, our decomposers, our pollinators. They're prey for other invertebrates and other species as well, like birds and bats, and lots rely on them. But what I'm going to talk about today is pollinators. So the reason I'm talking about pollinators is because the Get the Marches Buzzing project focuses on creating habitat for pollinators, as well as other wildlife too, because it naturally benefits them, but mainly pollinators. And that's one of our main interests at Buglife that we're working on as well. And this slide just shows the diversity of all of our different pollinators. We've got our bumblebees, our classic bumblebee up there in the left-hand corner. We've also got solitary bees, butterflies, moths, beetles, wasps, solitary wasps, flies, hoverflies. It says here that there's at least 1,500 species in Britain, but that's actually based on the National Pollinator Strategy. And that was quite a few years ago, so there's actually probably a lot more. But why are pollinators important? Why should we protect them? Well, actually, they pollinate about 84% of our EU crops. And like it says here, insect pollination is essential to growing our food. In fact, 1 out of every 3 mouthfuls of food is dependent on insect pollination. So a few foods that I'm sure you'll all don't want to live without. Chocolate, strawberries, tomatoes, lots more. And if we translate that into a cost, they provide us with a service that is worth millions, if not billions of pounds. But sadly, we are experiencing declines in our pollinators. This is taken from Butterfly Conservation. It's from their big butterfly count results. And I quite like the infographic, even though it is obviously a sad infographic, and it just shows the declines that we've seen this year in lots of butterfly populations. I know that we had quite a bad spring, so our spring species were hit, but we actually didn't have a great summer either. So we've just had a bad year all around for invertebrates, particularly our pollinators. Bumblebee Conservation Trust also do a recording scheme called Bee Walks, if you've heard of them. And they've also said that it's been their worst year on record for our bumblebees. I think they've had something like a 72% decline in red-tailed bumblebee, a 50% decline in white-tailed bumblebee, and 40% decline in tree bumblebees. And I think they're analysing the data currently, but it just shows that we are experiencing these declines. And that's also why it's so important that we have citizen science schemes as well, that we have volunteers that go out and look at this, because one organisation can't do everything. At Buglife, we also have a survey called Bugs Matter, where we're investigating the windscreen phenomenon. So you might have noticed that a few years ago when you drove your car, you had to clean your windscreen because there were quite a lot of splats of insects on there. But recently, and what I've noticed is now when I go for a drive, I don't have to really clean my windscreen as much because there's not very many insect splatters on there. And it just shows that we are seeing a decrease in the flying insect abundance. And what Bugs Matter is you take a photo of your number plate after you've cleaned it. You then do your journey, it tracks your journey on your phone, and then when you get to your other location, you take another photo and it counts how many insect splats there have been. And it finished last week actually. So I imagine our results being all sorted out at the moment, but you'll be able to find the results if you're interested on our website soon, and maybe take part in the survey next year. But I've talked to you about the declines. Well, why are we getting these declines? The main reason is habitat loss. We have lost over 97% of flower-rich grassland in the UK since the 1930s, which is a huge amount. It's actually equivalent to the size of Wales when you actually put it into context, because I don't think you can quite comprehend a 97% decline. And what's that is left is habitat that's fragmented and isolated. And this isn't very good, because if we have a great hay meadow or a great local nature reserve, what about if our pollinators need to travel outside of that local nature reserve? Perhaps there's a local extinction event, or they just need more nesting material, or they're looking for a mate. Unless they actually have a little stepping stone of flower-rich habitat for them to be able to move to and refuel with that pollen and nectar that they get from the flowers, they can only travel so far. So they're restricted then if you don't have that permeability in the landscape, and that results in declines. We've also got an increased use of pesticides and herbicides in agriculture, but also in gardens as well, and in the plants that we buy from garden centres, which causes a decline. Again, another factor that we're probably going to see a lot more now is climate change. So there's a decoupling from pollinators and their associated plants, with pollinators emerging at different times to the flowering times. And that can affect quite a few different species. So there's certain bees that will use only one type of flower, and the same with butterflies as well. So that could cause a problem with their population. So I've told you some not very good news, but what is the solution that Buglife have adopted to combat this? So Buglife have developed bee lines. The B stands for biodiversity. I'm sure, as I think quite a lot of you have already been to some of my events that we've put on, or have met me before, you probably already know about bee lines, but they are a network of 3-kilometre wide pathways connecting the best remaining areas of wildflower-rich habitat. So you can see here on this map, it kind of looks like a road network, but it's where we're targeting habitat connectivity, essentially, to try and connect up as much habitat as possible. And beelines actually aim to create and restore at least 150,000 hectares of flower-rich habitat across the UK, which is a huge amount, and something that we can't do by ourselves. So we're hoping that lots of farmers, landowners, wildlife organisations, businesses, local authorities, and the general public as well will work with us to help create as much flower-rich grassland as possible, but also doesn't have to just be a flower-rich grassland. It can be a flower-rich pond. It could be a flower-rich garden. There's lots of ways that you can get involved and create habitat for pollinators and invertebrates in general. So I've talked about Buglife now, but we're actually here to talk about the Get the Marches Buzzing project. So Get the Marches Buzzing is a 2-year project restoring flower-rich habitat for pollinators across Shropshire and North Herefordshire. And a big thanks to our funders. So our project is funded mainly by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and Severn Trent Water. We're also supported by Telford and Wrekin Council, Milky Wire, the Edward Cadbury Charitable Trust and the Military Oak Foundation. Just a little background before I get talking about Get the Marches Buzzing. For those of you that don't know, I started on the project as an intern for a year last April. So April 2023 I started. And then I moved up into this conservation officer role. So I'll talk a little bit about that as we're going through. So here are our map. Here's the map of the sites that we're working on. We're working on 13 different sites. If I start at the top, we're working with a private landowner at Shavington Estate up in North Shropshire. Then we go down to Telford, and there's quite a hub of sites that we're working on, as well as some open mosaic habitats. Then we go down into South Shropshire to Barnes Farm, and that is owned by the National Trust. And then we go further down into North Herefordshire, and we've got 2 private landowners, one at Birch Common and one at Corbett Farms. And then we've got the National Trust again with Croft Castle. So we've been working with a range of partners to restore flower-rich habitat at these 13 sites. Herefordshire Meadows are our delivery partner, so we've been working closely with them down in North Herefordshire. In fact, they delivered pretty much the entire bit of the work. And then we've also been working closely with Telford and Wrekin Council as well, and the National Trust. So out of those 13 sites, 10 of those sites are species-rich grasslands, so our hay meadows, which equates to 54.1 hectares. And then 3 of those sites, the 3 in Telford, in fact, are open mosaic habitats, and that equates to 9.2 hectares. And obviously, I'm saying open mosaic habitat. Well, what is open mosaic habitat? It looks like this. This is Langley Fields. And as you can see there, it's a mosaic of lots of different habitats. So we've got woodland, we've got heathland, we've got bare ground, we've got a little bit of grassland. There's also pools as well. It's a mosaic of lots of different habitats, and therefore it's really good for lots of different invertebrates and wildlife in general. And the 3 open mosaic habitats that we're working on in Telford is Langley Fields, which is what you can see right now, the Granville Local Nature Reserve, and Manor Road Pit Mound as well, in case you know of Telford and you know those sites. And then we're also doing species-rich grasslands. So these are our hay meadows, quite often used as a traditional farming. They're used in traditional farming methods, but they're also being used quite a lot, as we said, in Telford now on amenity grasslands and on road verges too. They're being adopted, which is great. And yellow rattle, this plant here that you can see on the left-hand photo that's in focus, this is the key plant that we need. It's called the meadow maker, and it's hemiparasitic on grasses, which means it reduces their growth by taking nutrients from their roots. And by reducing their growth, it means that there's more space for wildflowers to come through and to grow. So it's essential if you're creating a species-rich grassland. Or another alternative hemiparasitic plant that you can use, but yellow rattle is mainly used. And as part of Get the Marches Buzzing, we've got 2 target species. One of those is the Dingy Skipper butterfly, this one on the left-hand side. It's quite a drab-looking butterfly, but it's very rare and it's threatened. And when we've got quite a good population of Dingy Skipper, you know that you've probably got quite a good, healthy habitat for lots of other invertebrates too. And this butterfly actually uses its caterpillars, its larval food plant is the bird's foot trefoil, which you can find on the Bilberry Bumblebee photo, coincidentally. So it's that little yellow flower there, part of the pea family, and its caterpillars will only eat that plant, the leaves of that plant, as well as a few other trefoils, but mainly just bird's foot trefoil. And it's quite a fussy butterfly. It likes long grassland for roosting, short grassland with lots of bird's foot trefoil for its caterpillars, and then it also likes a bit of bare ground for basking. So that's why the open mosaic habitats that I showed you earlier are perfect for this butterfly. And it's got quite a good stronghold in Telford, so that's why it's one of our target species. And then this photo on the right hand side, this lovely little bumblebee, is called the Bilberry Bumblebee. It's an upland species, and as the name suggests, it feeds on bilberry when it first flowers in spring, and then it will feed on heather in the late summer/autumn. So usually there's this gap when the bilberry is finished flowering and before the heather is started to flower. That's called the hunger gap, where it needs to go out and forage for pollen and nectar elsewhere. And that's where it's really important that you've got nearby hay meadows. So Barnes Farm, the site that I pointed out at the start on the map, that is actually one of the sites that we have restored for the Bilberry Bumblebee as part of the Stepping Stones project with the National Trust. They've restored quite a few different meadows, but yes, it's really important. And we're hoping that the Bilberry Bumblebee will pop up on that site in years to come. It's going to have a bee walk transect that's being walked there. So fingers crossed it will come up and we'll be very happy on that day. And I just wanted to show you that Shropshire is actually a key site for the Bilberry Bumblebee in England, ignoring Wales, sorry. But you've got Dartmoor and Exmoor down south, and then up north you've got the Peak District. So it's a key site of upland heath, Shropshire is in between those. So yeah, so it's a good stronghold, and I know the National Trust are doing quite a lot, and obviously so have we within Buglife too, and that's why it's one of our target species. So I'm going to talk about the aims of the project now, and if we've achieved them or exceeded them. So without further ado, I'll get on. So as part of the project, we originally aimed to restore 57 hectares of flower-rich habitat across the 2 years, but we've increased this to a total of 63.3 hectares, which is really good. 43.6 hectares was restored in 2023, and then the rest, the 19.7 hectares, have been restored this year. In fact, the last bit of habitat work is currently happening right now. I went to visit the site today and it's looking great. The project also aimed to work with local volunteers to manage their local green spaces. Our target was 12 sessions, but we absolutely smashed that target and achieved 27 sessions instead. Largely, we need to thank Rick for that because he played a huge part with the volunteers. And that is actually it equates to 593 hours of donated time to the project from volunteers, which is incredible. And thank you so much to every single volunteer that's turned up to the sessions. And they've been really varied. So the ones that you can see here at the bottom are on our open mosaic habitats, which definitely require a lot of volunteer effort to maintain the heathland habitat. But we've had others as well. So here we've got some hand seed sowing. This was at the Russells, the private landowner in Berkshire Common down in North Herefordshire. You've had lots of plug planting, heather seeding, more plug planting, even a litter pick where we found quite a lot of questionable stuff. But one figure that I'm really proud of is that by the end of the project, we actually will have planted about 17,301 wildflower plants, which is incredible. A lot of those have been planted by you, Rick, and all of the the sessions that you've done. But thank you very much, because I know it's a little bit of a tedious job, but it will hopefully look absolutely brilliant when it's all in flower next year. And I really wanted to do a quick shout out to the Friends of Granville and the Friends of Dawley Hamlet's local nature reserve. You can see the Friends of Granville here in the bottom middle photo, everyone waving their heather seed in the air. But it's been really lovely to work with both groups, and they've been really proactive with the volunteering. I wanted to show you a few progress photos of the work that we've done. So this here is at Manor Road Pit Mound. It would have been woodland. It would have had quite a lot of standing birch there, but with a contractor we cleared some of it. It was felled to create open areas to let the sunlight come in and hopefully allow the heather to regenerate. So this photo here on the left-hand side, you can see that some regenerating birch has come back through, little saplings. So we had a volunteer work party and we were pulling out the birch saplings, and then underneath there was loads of new heather that had started to germinate, which is a real success. You can see it a little bit better here. This is actually at the Granville Local Nature Reserve, not at Manor Road Pit Mound. But you can see that lots of the heather, by just having light after the birch being felled, it just means that it started to really thrive again, which is brilliant. Because well, that is what the habitat is like, the heathland, but also it will just provide that late floral resource for our pollinators that are still around in autumn, especially our queen bumblebees. And also on the right hand side, we've got some bird's foot trefoil that's naturally coming through on the seed bank. And that's really important because, again, as I said, with the Dingy Skipper, it's that's its larval food plant. So it's great that it's coming through. I just quickly wanted to show you this. So this is Manor Road Pit Mound. And apparently, because I didn't actually get to see this, but the site was mainly just gorse here, and there was a little corridor that you could walk through. So as you can see, there was large scale gorse clearance here, but loads of mulch was still remaining. So we had lots of hand raking days, and then eventually we did get a contractor in to put a scrape in and put a graded invertebrate bank. So we're hoping that that stops the gorse a little bit, although it will definitely come back at some point and again require quite a lot of volunteers to help get rid of it. And this is Barnes Farm. So this was the site that I was talking about with the Bilberry Bumblebee and with the National Trust. So it was seeded last September in strips. It's 17 hectares in size. And I just wanted to show you the progress. So the yellow rattle is established really well. That's an annual, so it'll come up every year, but the perennials won't come up until next year. So it's doing really well. And yeah, hopefully it'll be really good in the years to come. Oh, and this is One Bridge grassland. So this is the restoration that we've been doing this year. And you can see here that the ground prep that needs to be done for a species rich grassland, it's been cut and collected, and then we used a chain harrow to create about 50% bare ground, and then it was seeded and rolled. So fingers crossed next year it will be a beautiful wildflower meadow. So back to my aims of the project. One of the aims was to deliver training workshops to enable people to contribute to recording schemes. And two of the training workshops needed to be species focused ones, one on the Dingy Skipper and one on the Bilberry Bumblebee. And you can see them in the photos below. So you can actually see the Bilberry Bumblebee that we caught. I was really worried when we went to this meadow that we weren't going to be able to catch any Bilberry Bumblebees, but I think everyone that came caught maybe more than one because there were that many there. And that just shows that what we're doing is, well, hopefully what we're doing will actually benefit that population. We also had to deliver 8 community engagement events, including a series of nature connection sessions to inspire people to connect to nature, and also deliver a winter webinar series, which we did do. Our nature connection events were really good. I really enjoyed them. So we had a yoga in a wildflower meadow, which turned into yoga in a room because it rained. And then we also had a nature storytelling event as well. And yeah, they were just really good because you got to meet people that necessarily wouldn't have maybe come and volunteered with us before then, and we actually had a few people from the yoga session come and volunteer with us after then as well, which is really positive. So overall, we actually delivered 10 community engagement events, beating our target, 9 external talks, 5 training workshops, 4 online webinars, although that's 5 now, and 3 landowner workshops. And that means that we've meaningfully engaged with 871 people through talks and events, plus an extra 213 volunteers and 312 school children. So 1,414 people altogether. And I'm pretty proud of that target. I think that's a lot of people, and it's probably more than that too, because we haven't included any stalls or conferences that we've gone to. So that's really great. We also had to deliver some landowner workshops. We delivered 3 of them. So this one here is from July. We did an importance of hedgerows and species-rich grasslands with CPRE and Megan Gimber from the People's Trust of Endangered Species. That went really well. We also had a winter management of species-rich grasslands workshop with Rory from Herefordshire Meadows, and a botanical ID workshop with flower insect time counts training too. And they were really successful. One part of my job when I was the intern on the project was to work with the schools. I really enjoyed this. We decided to do a bit more of an ambitious project because there were 2 of us on the project, and we termed it Get Your School Buzzing. Our target was to work with 3 schools, but we actually worked with 5 schools across the project area, beating our target. The 5 schools were Morton Say Primary School, Adderley Primary School, Shobden Primary School, Dawley C of E Primary Academy, and then Colebrookdale and Ironbridge Primary School too. And it was so much fun working with them all. The children were so enthusiastic and really learned a lot from the sessions. We really enjoyed it, and so did they. We actually delivered 8 school sessions, incorporating classroom learning, followed by a practical outdoor session where we actually created their own pollinator-friendly habitats within their school grounds. So you can see here on that middle photo, this lovely bug hotel that I slaved over with my dad making. So I'm very proud of that. And then some planters as well and hoverfly lagoons. So we created loads of different habitats. And a big thank you to all of the teachers that we worked with, especially Charlotte McMullen. We enjoyed it so much that we decided to do a legacy project. We worked with a local artist called Lynn Morgan, who was absolutely fantastic, and she created these lovely meadow canvases with the kids' help. So with the children, they drew their own flower, and then Lynn did the rest because obviously with time constraints. And it's really nice that we've given it back to the schools so that they have something to remember the work that we've done with them, and also for the students to feel really proud because they should. They worked really hard on creating their pollinator friendly habitats, and I know that they're still looking after them now, which is great. We also created a video with them, which I highly recommend giving it a watch if you want to, and some resources on our website too. We also worked with another local artist to create some interpretation boards. Our target was to install 3, but we installed 4 instead. And the local artist is Sarah Jameson, and her work is absolutely beautiful. And I'm very proud of the boards. They look really lovely. So I'm at the end now. I just wanted to briefly highlight the successes and challenges of the project. So our successes, we've had some brilliant events, and we've met lots of people that are new to Buglife. They didn't know that Buglife even existed before, which is really good, so that we've increased our awareness. We've worked with some fantastic partners and landowners. I'm incredibly biased is that there was an intern built into the project. I think when you've got 2 people, it makes it a lot easier to say yes and to go to different events, and you can do stalls because you know you've got somebody else, and do more ambitious projects like the Get Your School Buzzing, sorry. And also a huge success was all of the proactive friends of groups that we've worked with. A huge thank you to them again. Challenges, we've had a bit of a challenge with getting wildflower seed this year, mainly due to weather, I think. It's been quite a bad year, but also the weather has obviously been a challenge. Been a challenge with obviously declining, with obviously causing declines with species, but also with some of our habitat work that we're doing now. So for example, with all of our seeding, it's incredibly wet at the moment, so we don't know what's going to happen with the seed, if it's going to rot with waterlogged ground. And also we're doing some work with some scrapes on one of our sites at the moment, and the ground is too wet really to get on, so that's a constant challenge. I'd say one of our biggest challenges was the engagement and working with different volunteers. It's been quite hard because obviously we put on our events during the week, and people work during the week, so it's always that trade-off with if we put things on at the weekend, will we get more people coming? But we obviously work during the week. And it's, yeah, we've had really good responses with our volunteers, but without Rick doing the social value side of things, I think we would have struggled with the volunteers. Also saying no, and there's so much that you can get involved with. It's really horrible to say no because you want to say yes to everything, but you can't. Maintaining the heathland habitat, always going to be a challenge, to fight back against the regenerating gorse and birch, and also getting good photos of invertebrates, quite challenging sometimes. As you can see here, this is Kate trying to take a photo of Dingy Skipper in the right hand top corner, and these are just a few photos which I thought I'd put on there briefly because they're just really lovely and some special memories. So yeah, Rick and I are doing some yoga during one of our volunteer events. This photo at the bottom in the middle is actually my second day at work. Rory is in the orange coat there, and we actually got rained on, and it hailed on us, in fact, on a site visit looking at all of the sites in North Herefordshire. It was quite an introduction to field work. And I just think it's really nice to see all the happy smiley faces. That's James Taylor there and Kate in the bottom right hand corner. They've helped us a lot on the project. Obviously Kate was on the project, and yeah, I just think it's really nice when someone picks up a mattock and is a bit nervous to begin with about using it, and then actually they really enjoy it. You can see from the smiling faces that everyone's had a great time. So finally, how can you get involved now that the project is finishing? Well, if you go onto our Buglife website and go to beelines, you can actually add your site to our map, whether that is a flower-rich garden or it is an ancient hay meadow. Anything is good. Please add it on. So you just you go onto the interactive map, you click add site, you zoom into where you want to put it, and then it comes up with this form that you fill out. You can add some comments, add some photos if you want to. This is an example of where we've done one ourselves. But if anybody has any problems or wants to do it, please get in touch with me. And also, I suppose, how you can get involved is wildlife friendly gardening. Anyone can do something, even if it's putting a bee hotel on your wall or planting different flowers. I'd say probably with climate change, the best thing at the moment is to plant flowers that flower. Plant plants that have a flowering season all year round. So say you've got your heather for autumn, you've got something else for winter, etc., something else for spring and summer. I know that this year I actually saw my first queen bumblebee in February, and it was feasting on our wintering heather. So they're emerging a lot earlier now as well. So it's really important that we've got plants all year round. Another way you can get involved, join the local Friends of group, Friends of Granville, Friends of Dorley Local Nature Reserve. And also we're looking for somebody to survey Langley Fields for us. So if anybody is interested in surveying for the Dingy Skipper, then please get in touch with me. My email address is here and my number. I'll put this up again at the end, or well, you've all got an email from me anyway. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. I'm now going to pass on to Rory. I feel like I'm slightly over. Oh no, I'm okay on time. Rory is the director and Meadows advisor at Herefordshire Meadows, and he is who we've been working with directly to do the work in North Herefordshire. So he's going to talk a little bit more about that now.
Okay, thank you. I'll just load this up. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah, okay, thank you, Emily. Great, thank you very much, Emily. So Emily's asked me to just speak briefly about some of the work that we've been doing in Herefordshire on the Get the Marches Buzzing project. But just very quickly, who are we? For those who don't know, Herefordshire Meadows. So we are a charity, and this is just a very brief overview of some of the things that we get up to. So our main charitable objective is to create, restore and protect species-rich grasslands across the county of Herefordshire, and we aim to achieve that objective in lots and lots of different ways. So we started off purely as an advisory service and working with a farm cluster group, and then we've gone on to do actual capital restoration works. Emily has told me to plug that we've now restored 332 hectares to date in Herefordshire of species-rich meadows. So since 2019 on projects like we've been working and getting the marches buzzing. And we run training events, discussion meetings, we do partnership work, and we also have been doing some work with schools as well. So hopefully you can see all the purple blobs on there. So as Emily said, we worked with 3 different landowners across 5 different sites. So we worked with the National Trust, which are the 2 large blobs in the middle, and then 2 private landowners, which are on the far right of the screen, and in the middle there's 2 small fields there. So our engagement started actually way back in the bid stage. We were approached by Kate Jones when she was looking to put together this bid for the lottery heritage funding, and we did some scoping and we called for some expression of interest, and landed upon these 4 sites as being good potential candidates for increased diversity of the grasslands. And the project's kind of all kicked off in 2023. As Emily says, she got a baptism of fire with hail at the National Trust when we were going to go and do a initial site scoping of that event. But thankfully, we did not get hail in June when we ran our plant ID training day. So this was held at the Lean Farm, which is near to Pembridge. And we run this every year for all of our restoration site owners. And it is an opportunity. It's run by our Vice County Botanical Recorder, Stuart Headley. And it's an opportunity for all of the restoration site owners to upskill themselves to be able to identify some of the key indicator species, which we hope will start emerging in their meadows. And this will then allow them to continue with that monitoring year on year, and they feed back that data to us, so we have some quantitative information on how the progress of these sites is coming along. We also ran a Bumblebee ID training day. This was actually at Croft Castle, in this fantastic meadow, which is essentially a monoculture of oxeye daisy. There is actually more diversity than meets the eye. There is a lot more going on in there, but the oxeyes just stand very tall and proud up above the other flowers. So this is actually a meadow which we restored in the winter of 2019-2020 on a different project, and it's looking absolutely fabulous. And we had Dr. Richard Comont, who works for the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, who led the session. And everyone got to have a go at catching and identifying the bumblebees. And then we also had a run through of the bee walk methodology. It was quite a cold and breezy day, so we were very fortunate to be able to duck down into the walled garden at Croft as well, where all the bumblebees had gone to shelter too. But yeah, that was again another opportunity for the landowners to come and upskill themselves. And we also had quite a few volunteers from Croft Castle as well, who are involved with the ongoing monitoring there, both of pollinators and of the plants. So one of the other things we do as a charity is we harvest donor seed. So we have our own brush seed harvester, which is this red box, which is being pulled behind the quad bike. It has a row of nylon brushes inside it. They sweep across the top of the ripe seed, and then we will do a rough sieve in the field and lay out to dry for a couple of days, actually, in a suitable storage space, a barn, where it's dry but has some air ventilation. And we will then use this seed to create our new meadows. So we harvested from 2 donor sites for the restoration works we did in North Herefordshire, and both very, very nearby, so within 5 miles. So we've got that really good match in terms of suitability of species for the local habitat, ecosystem, and geology. And then we need to prepare the sites. So this was the most interesting one to prepare, which is why I put some photos up here. So this is front meadow at Croft Castle. And the thing that makes this site very interesting is that it is a very high important archaeological site. So the castle that you see at Croft Castle is, in the whole scheme of things, is actually relatively quite modern. And there's lots of much older archaeology which are buried beneath the field which surrounds the castle that's there today. And so for this reason, we had to be really careful in how we approached the ground preparation works. We had feedback from the National Trust archaeologist and Historic England. And the tool which we landed upon, which you can see here in a photo, is a grass harrow or grass tine harrow. And what this is doing is it's opening up the grass enough to get the seed in, but it's not doing any cultivation or disturbance. So it's not a typical piece of kit that we use, but it was what we had to use in this situation to be mindful of the sensitivity of the site. And we also were doing this in every third strip as well, because this is, out of all the sites, has the greatest existing diversity at the moment, but it's missing some key indicator species. So we were wanting to introduce those species, but at the same time not having a detrimental impact on those plants that are already there. We had a great volunteer day spreading the seed along these strips, and then the site was rolled, as you see in the top left photo, just to help with getting that contact of the pushing the seeds down into the ground. So I mentioned volunteer seed broadcasting day. So we had a great day at Croft. We also had a fantastic day at Berkshire Common with the Russells. They drummed up all of our neighbours, friends, local community to come and help them with seeding their 3 fields. And lots of buckets were involved, and bamboo canes, all very high tech. Everyone had a very good time, I think not least helped by the amazing cake and tea that was on offer afterwards. We also ran a volunteer plug planting day. Again, this was on front meadow, and this was again the species that were missing. So we both added them in seed form and also plugs. The plugs came from a lovely little seed grower, husband and wife team called EcoHab, who are based down in South Herefordshire, North Gloucestershire border. And this was a corporate volunteer day when we had about a dozen corporate volunteers came down and had their go with some dibbers, putting some of the plugs into the ground. And then, yes, as Emily mentioned, we ran a winter management training day in South Shropshire at the Barnes Farm. We also ran another one in Herefordshire. So between the 2 events, we managed to capture all of the farmers and land managers. And this was to have a kind of open discussion and interaction about the importance of that first winter management to help with the establishment of those new seedlings. So this is about grazing and grazing timing, keeping the grass nice and short, get as much light, air and water down to the emerging seedlings, but ensuring you take the grazing off when those first little yellow rattle seedlings appear. So that's a quick whirlwind tour of what happened in North Herefordshire, and yeah, we'd like to say a big thank you once again to Buglife and all the funders and the land managers that we worked with. And if you do want to get in touch or find out more about what we get up to, those are my details there.
It was, I have to admit, the Russell's seed sowing day was probably one of my favorites. Definitely with the cake. It was really nice. But it's been really lovely to work with you, Rory, and I think it rained again actually when I came down for the seed sowing at Croft Castle. I just don't have very good luck, and I actually did a butterfly weekend event at Croft Castle, and it rained for that too. So maybe I'm just cursed when it comes to going to Croft Castle in the rain. But yes, it's been really lovely. So now I'm going to pass on to Rick. Now, Rick, I've written your title down because you're a Green Infrastructure Project Officer.
Can you spell it though? That's the question.
I can spell it, I'm sure.
It's a long title. It's not a long payslip. But right, let me just. I'm just sharing my screen frantically now. Now this works very well in practice, but
There is
let's
a
just see if
little
it works
bit
quite
of
as
a
well when we do the real
quiz
thing.
on this, isn't there? So if anybody wants to use the chat to give some answers, please do.
Okay, can you see what I'm looking at?
I can, yeah.
You can see the presentation. Good. Yeah, so welcome along. I am from Telford and Wrekin Council. I've shortened my title. I just work for the Parks and Open Spaces team. And just in case you've not been to Telford, I just thought I'd start off by talking about the area before I get into the fantastic work we've done with Buglife, because honestly, it's been such a journey and such a positive journey for everyone that's been involved with this project. So onwards and upwards, quiz time. If you want to put any answers in the chat, you can. There's no prizes for this. It's just for giggles. So according to Natural England's latest guidelines, how many minutes walk should every person be away from quality green spaces to benefit for their mental health? Now, I've just realised I can't see the chat when I'm showing the screen, but I'll be interested to go back and review your answers after. Just get a figure in mind of how many minutes you think we should be away, according to the government's watchdog for natural open spaces.
Someone's guessed 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, right. 15 minutes. Now, a little interesting statistic that comes from that, a third of people who live in the United Kingdom can't do that because their areas are too built up. And just to put that in perspective, we meet the target in Telford with absolute ease. The average distance from our open spaces, walking a slow walking pace, is 8 minutes, and that's for every home in our borough. Now, I can tell you from living in Telford and looking at the statistics even further, that if you live in South Telford, it's half of that. You are 4 minutes walk from a quality open green space if you live in South Telford, and it's North Telford, which is a little bit more built up because it's a bit, it's just naturally more built up. It pulls the average up slightly, but still we are almost half the target, half the time limit from what Natural England recommend we should have. So that tells you what we've got. Official nature reserves. I wouldn't expect anyone to particularly know this figure, but you could take a guess if you want. How many official nature reserves? Emily, you'll have to let me know if anyone does put an answer on here.
Someone's put 18.
18. Right, okay. I wonder if that's one of our ecologists, because by the end of this year, it will be 23. There's a few more which is going through. So 23 local nature reserves, and that is supported. So local nature reserves are protected for nature in general. They're obviously public access land, but they are protected spaces for wildlife habitat. But we've also got 300 green guarantee sites, which are, it's like your formal park areas, your public green spaces, such as your sports pitches and things like that. So they do have habitat on them, but they're not give the highest level of protection for habitat, but they can still have natural features on them, which is something that we're really trying to incorporate more habitat within these green guarantee sites. And maybe some of these will go on to become local nature reserves, which is brilliant news. Right, this one's a good one. So it's Telford Town. So true or false? Telford is an official tree city of the world. Anyone wants to take a guess, they're very welcome to. If not, I'll tell you the answer. Like I say, this is not your GCSE questions here. This is just me having a bit of fun with you.
True.
It is true. Only one of 21 nationally. Now let's just have a look what that looks like. So this is Telford Town Centre. So this is the epicenter of Telford, where all the businesses and the retail, this is where it all happens. This is the centre of our town. And yet, if you look at it from above, you can see that just how many trees we've got just in that area alone. And that's before you start getting to the rural outskirts. So we've got an absolute massive amount of habitat going on there. I'll put that on a little map format. So just on the left-hand side, you can see the outline of Telford as a town there in the red. You can see the protected green spaces. That's the Telford and Wrekin owned protected green spaces, not the privately owned ones, of which we know there are more. That's on the left-hand map. And it's only when you compare it to the one on the right where you see overlaid in green the amount of land that the council own, and then you look at where they correlate. So you can see everywhere that the council has owned land, they do have protected green spaces given designated protected status. Now, when you think we've got to balance that with the leisure facilities for people and business outlets and community and amenity areas, it's actually a massive amount of space. So I'm really proud of what we've got here, and I've lived in other places, and I've come back, and it just makes me prouder still of it, really, of how much we've got in our green network. Obviously, there is a challenge within that. There's no consistent funding for managing habitats. We get basic funding, which we have to stretch to go far to do the basic sort of pathway works and bin emptying and the sort of mowing on the sort of urban areas and within the inner estates and stuff like that. But there's no consistent funding there. So just like I was saying there, very limited tasks are done under our routine maintenance. So we have to be quite creative to try and get funds in. Now, biodiversity net gain is something we looked at quite closely. That's an initiative which has come in. And that's...
Can anybody see Rick's presentation, or is it just me? Can you see it, Rory?
It's just dropped out. I think you need to just reshare your screen, Rick.
Reshare the screen. Right. Okay. No worries. Okay. Right. Bear with me. Right. Share screen. Entire screen. Right. If it's going to go wrong, it would be me that broke it. That's for sure. Right. Okay. At what point did it drop out? Just out of curiosity.
Just as when you were talking about the funding.
Oh yeah. Okay. We'll go past the quiz bit then. We don't need the quiz bit.
Yeah. Here.
Here, right here. Right, so it broke on that exact point. Weirdly, I got a little error, a little box pop up on the bottom of the screen, but I just clicked it to make it go away. That was probably my fault. Oh, so yeah, so biodiversity net gain. People might have heard of biodiversity net gain. It's a government initiative where credits are given out if a development is taking place within an area and they have an obligation to increase biodiversity with the land that they own. If they can't do it all within their site, then they will pay a landowner to uplift on their behalf somewhere else. And we obviously, there's been quite a lot of development going on in the West Midlands. We were looking at that as a way of funding our green spaces to make them more sustainable. But what we've actually found is the funding is really targeted towards finding units that are bad, so habitat which is poor condition, and actually making it into good or excellent condition. But there isn't really anything that maintains habitat which is good and then keeps it good, if you know what I mean. So there's a real gap in the funding which we found. So that hasn't brought in as much as we would like. So what we're really having to do is get the support from organisations, and Buglife has been absolutely massive for this, and look for one-off grants which we can get as well, just to keep these areas really delivering for wildlife in the way that we want them to. So Buglife, like I say, they've been absolutely huge for us. They've come in and they've really helped us out. If you look at the map of the centre of Telford here, we were talking about Emily was talking about the Buglife bee lines earlier on. You can see that we've got one that goes right through the centre of our town, which is why I've been really fortunate when the Buglife team came in, and they've actually worked on 8 of our sites and just helped us do lots of work within those sites. So the bee line runs right through the middle of our town. So I'm just distracted because a 9-year-old decided to walk into the room in the background. You can't see that, but I could. So if I just start to stutter my words slightly there, I'm just trying to coordinate what he's doing, because he should be in bed, but children are very curious creatures, aren't they? And so Buglife came in, and those bits of work which we knew needed doing, or perhaps didn't know we needed doing, because they obviously brought areas to our attention using their expansive knowledge. They've been able to bring contractors in to do bits and pieces of work for us. They partnered with us on a number of community events, which have been absolutely fantastic. They've helped us map out species within our nature reserves, which is wonderful, and set up surveying systems. It's really uplifted the knowledge of myself and the partners that I work with. And we talked about the role of friends of groups and volunteers on our local nature reserves. Of the 23 local nature reserves that we've got, 14 have active friends of groups, but we're always looking to kind of expand that. So more of our nature reserves do have volunteers, and the volunteers that we have in existence at the moment have got sort of the skills to be looking after the critical habitat. So having this injection of knowledge come in has been absolutely huge for us. Yeah, so moving on. Some of the things we've done with Buglife, the pollinator garden. Now, Emily, you weren't around for the original pollinator garden, weren't you? You came in sort of a bit late in the day, but this was the first project we did with Buglife. And I'd like to think that this was something that we did for the community, by the community. So this was in one of our Green Guarantee sites at Great Dorley Town Park. There is an area of that park which was looking a little bit disheveled, redundant, abandoned, and it used to get a lot of criticism and people really didn't know what to do with it. And when Buglife came on board and said that they wanted to make stepping stone habitats, that was one of the areas that I thought this would work really, really well, because it's kind of between two of our local nature reserves, and it just kind of sat in an ideal location. So we got local groups involved with that. So we got the Small Woods Trust involved with that. My Options, who do disability support for adults, they came in with groups. You can see them on the left-hand side doing some of the groundworks for us. So that's really helping them with their skills and also learning about pollinators as they go. Seed School Engagement came along and did some of the groundworks for us. Friends of Dawley Park, which was a local Friends of group, got involved with it. And Dawley CV Primary School. And that really is a bit of a legacy. You know, that first project that we did has got a legacy now, because people use that as a learning resource. There's local residents can go there and actually get among pollinating insects and pollinating flowers and look at them and study them. And the local schools are using that as well, because it's so accessible in the local community. So that was a really wonderful place to start. Volunteers. Now, we've had massive success with the volunteers and the volunteering, and I'm always looking to increase, like I say, I'm always looking to increase volunteers that are supporting our local nature reserves. So when we had the opportunity to run some volunteer projects with Buglife expertise, we really went in on that. Now, they've been massively supported by corporate volunteers, which have been huge for us. So if you don't know what corporate volunteers are, they are local businesses get in touch quite regularly, and they're asking for opportunities for the workforces to come out and actually get some practical stuff for the community, which is for the good of the community. And it's meant basically for us that we've had lots of people come forward. They might not have worked in conservation before. They don't necessarily always know that much about nature, but what they have come is they've come in their droves as a bit of a captive audience, and they've done the work for us and got stuck in. And what I found an absolute pleasure with that, they're not the type of people that generally go to our nature reserves, but once they've worked on our Buglife projects and actually learned a bit about it, I'm seeing these people again on our nature reserves in their own leisure time, and they're telling me about the species that they've seen. And that is huge, because that's not just an impact on the individual, but they're going back with their families, they're going back with their kids, and it's been absolutely massive for us and a real positive. So here's a bit about some stats for you. So 198 volunteers have been worked with on the projects that we delivered with Buglife. Emily tallied that up to 593 hours. I got 594, which means I've added an hour from somewhere, or I'm generally quite bad at maths. Either way, it's quite an amazing statistic when you think about, the level of time that we've done and the amount of people that we've reached with this. So that's been absolutely amazing. Obviously, the public events as well. I'm all about connecting people with wildlife, local people, because ultimately, if you're connecting local people with the wildlife, giving them a bit of ownership for their areas, then they're going to go on and hopefully look after these places. And there's ways they can do that. They can get involved with one of our Friends of groups, or with the identification sessions which we taught people about the role of iRecord and citizen science, and what you can do with a smartphone when you go out and see something and document that. It goes onto the national database, and that's helping us keep track of our species and what's going on with these. Particularly now the habitats have had a lot more better condition at work sort of taking place, which is made them better places for the insects and what's going on. So the legacy of Buglife, our open spaces now, obviously we've got 8 which has been worked on with this project. They're much more thriving, they're better condition than what they were before, which is an absolutely amazing thing. The resident species, they're better documented now. There's a wider awareness of what they are with our critical habitats and what those critical species are, which is amazing, really, because more eyes and ears looking after these particular species and looking after these places, the better, really. That knowledge is going to get passed on, and it's going to last for the long term. Staff looking after these places, we're using all the data that Buglife have given us, and we're using all the information that we're getting back from our volunteers, and that's helping us shape practices, which will mean that you can't just leave an area and just kind of leave it to its own devices. Once it's had those interventions, it's put us in a really good place, but there's obviously still work that needs to take place, and obviously having staff that have got the knowledge of what that is means they can coordinate it better, and also work with the volunteer groups which are working out on these sites, and just make sure that doesn't stop now, but it continues. And it's also helped me with, we're getting more social value groups coming forward now and wanting work on our nature reserves. It's given me a better plan of what these groups can do over the sort of different seasons, particularly on those habitats which have had the Buglife work. And like I say, we're looking after certain species there and making these places better, then we've got a better structure to what can take place now. So all good. So that is, in a nutshell, just a little bit about Telford and Wrekin and some of the work that's took place. It's been an absolute blast and an absolute pleasure. I've really absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. So Emily, thank you very much, and to the whole Buglife team as well for what you've brought to us, because like I say, our nature reserves are in a better place. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I know that so many local people now have got knowledge that they wouldn't have had without it, and I just think that's a really, really great thing for our local area. So just a huge thank you to finish. And I've put my contacts on the chat, so if anyone does want to volunteer on any of our Telford and Wrekin nature reserves, or just want to find out a bit more about them, just get in touch, because I'm happy to give you that information. So there we go.
Oh, thanks, Rick.
No problem.
And Rory as well. It's been really lovely to actually look back at everything that we've done as part of the 2 years. It feels like it's gone by really quick, but also when you actually look at everything you have achieved, we've done a lot in those 2 years. So yeah, it's been really lovely. I mean, the community event that we did as well, I didn't mention that. There's so many more things that I could, but we don't have time.
I know. I was thinking about this for my presentation, because you've got such a lot to fit into a short time. But the sort of successes that we've got from that, it's hard to kind of summarize it all, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's been really good. I think what's been good about the project is the range of people that have been involved. So you've got local people, but you've also got farmers and landowners too. You've got people from different organizations that have wanted to come up and train in different ID skills as well. So it's just been broad, which has been great. So yeah, thank you very much for a little bit of a whistle stop tour. Does anybody have any questions for us? I don't really know if it's if anybody does. Let me have that. Thanks, Holly. Holly in the chat actually worked with Kate to put the application together for Get the Marches Buzzing. So it's a big thank you to her as well, that this project is possible. It's really nice that you've joined, so you've been able to see what happened after putting in the application and it being funded, which is great. Actually, pretty much everyone that's here has been involved with the project. So quite a lot of different volunteers. So we've got Bob and Dave from the Friends of Dawley Hamlets Local Nature Reserve, and Carolyn from Friends of Granville as well. James is here from Great Dawley Town Council as well, who's been helped a lot.
I think from a Telford perspective, hearing all these local people and hearing about, and actually seeing, it's like you say, when you see it up there, I'm seeing it up there on a presentation, and these are the reserves that I go to sort of in my job, but also in my own leisure time, and it's great to see people from the Friends of group coming along and still staying in touch with everything that's going on and really being enthused about it. And that's, I find that makes me really genuinely quite proud of what's been achieved, and also really grateful to Buglife for what you've brought in here, because it's really helped what we're going to do going forward now, and everybody's contribution is massively valuable. So everything that's been done is absolutely fantastic, and everybody's ongoing interest in this, in wildlife in general, but in particular the nature reserves where they've been involved with, going forward, that's how these places become sustainable, isn't it, really? So
yeah. So we haven't got any questions, I don't think. So the one question that I'm going to ask you both, do you have any plans to go back to the sites over the coming years to survey the sites once they've taken seed? And will you be sharing the species recordings with the Ambient Atlas? Yes, we do. So as part of the project, we're carrying out a bee walk on 2 of the sites. The one up in North Shropshire with the private landowner, and the Barnes Farm site, because we're looking forward to hopefully seeing the Bilberry Bumblebee. And we're also carrying out rapid grassland assessments. So I'll be going back to those 2 sites and carrying out rapid grassland assessments. And Rory, the landowners in North Herefordshire, doing the same, because they've been trained up for that, which is brilliant, and a really good tip for a future project. What else? We're also doing butterfly and moth surveys with the help of Jenny Joy. She is a local butterfly expert in Telford. She's helped us create these survey forms specifically for Telford and for the Dingy Skipper. So we're doing them at quite a few sites in Telford, and if anybody does want to do it at Langley Fields rather than me doing it, that would be great if anybody is interested. So we'll be sharing those records on iRecord, and then I think they're getting directly added via the county recorder. I think that's where they're going to. So yes, we'll be looking for the future populations of Dingy Skipper specifically, but also other populations too. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. I thought, as one last question to you both, if you had somebody that came up to you and they said maybe they're either a landowner with land, or they just have a great garden that they want to maybe do something for wildlife, what would be your first suggestion that you would tell them?
The first suggestion for their land,
or garden, you know,
or garden,
you can do for wildlife. What would your first thing say? What was the first
right?
thing?
So for my personal opinion, bang for buck, one of the things which will make a big difference is if you have, like, there's a few things. It just depends what's kind of there ready. Ponds, my experience of putting ponds into a garden, all of a sudden completely changes the dynamic of what comes into that garden. Obviously, you can't just have a pond with nothing around it. You need some kind of plant structure around there. Obviously, insects will need nectar, so something floral in there. If you just want to get into nature, and I suppose this is the way that I got into nature or got kids into nature, bird feeders are fantastic. I know that's not necessarily what you're looking for, but a good addition is a bird feeder and a wall chart with what birds are on there. These are all things.
I think a pond is a really good idea because you've
Yeah,
got your flowers around it, and you've also got your wetland habitat too for lots of other invertebrates. That's a good one. Go on, Rory.
yeah.
What's yours?
I don't know if Rory's frozen.
I feel like he has.
But yeah, just going back to the pond thing. So we made one out of a plastic tub that used to be a drawer, and I just made it with the kids. We expected nothing of it, and it was literally no bigger than a washing up bowl. And within a few days of it being in, we had newts in it.
Wow.
So, and then birds start using it to drink from. Insects start using it. So it was just a great thing to add, really. So
you froze, Rory. Were you trying to get out of answering?
I didn't know whether it was, it probably was me, the Herefordshire internet. Yeah, to answer your question, well, I'm obviously slightly biased because I'm going to say species-rich grasslands. But yeah, you mentioned it earlier on. I think, Emily, just the scale doesn't matter, and those little stepping stones, even in a little garden environment, are incredibly useful and important in terms of giving that connectivity in a landscape. And I think people can maybe sometimes get a bit put off by the fact that, we're showing pictures of big fields there, and they'll say, well, it doesn't apply to me. I don't have a big field to do this. Yeah, but anything, even small, there's a great organization called Plant Life, and they have their, am I cutting in and out?
In and out, but I am hearing it. Are you going to say that they have their Meadows that you can use?
Yeah, so they've got have a look at Plant Life's website. They're the ones who've pioneered No Mow May and Let It Bloom June. So it's all about just putting your mower away and just letting your lawn grow up for those months and just seeing what comes. And it can be amazing what you can just have in your lawn. And you can do flower counts with the kids and with the big kids. And there's lots of things you can get engaged with at a very small scale.
I think that's a really good idea. No Mow May is a really good introduction to letting your grass grow long and realizing nature isn't tidy, is it? So quite often people love mowing the lawn, but actually that doesn't have a lot of benefit to wildlife. So if you just maybe let it grow long just for that month, see what you think about it, maybe you'll like it. We've put a mini meadow actually in our front garden, and
Time as well.
Yeah. So I just think,
Yeah.
that's a good one. What would I say? I think I'm just all about planting flowers for different seasons now, making sure you've got if you have the space in your garden, you've got plants all year round. And people, if you like growing fruit and veg as well, pollinators are your friend. So yeah, just enjoy seeing the wildlife in your garden and actually taking the time to look. So go out mindfully and see that actually that bumblebee is a different colour to what I thought it originally was. It's not just black and yellow. It's like this one here. It's a ginger bee instead. It's a common carder bee, and just taking an interest in the natural world. I challenge you all the next time you go for a walk to actually not just be in your own head and listen to the bird song. And see what's flying about around you, and actually take interest in the natural world, because there's quite a lot out there that you miss when you're on your walk, just going from A to B as quickly as possible. But anyway, thank you very much for coming this evening, and for everyone that's come and attended this webinar or is watching online, and a big thank you again to you, Rory and Rick, for speaking as well. It's been really lovely to work with you, and a really lovely 2 years. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I hope everyone has a lovely evening.